Before you move on, stop for a second and feel what happens inside you when this person comes to mind. Not the story, not the fear, just the feeling. Because some people enter your life and leave behind a memory, but some arrive and change the direction of your inner world so deeply that nothing feels accidental again. If you have tried to forget them and still cannot, if you have told yourself it is done and yet something in you keeps turning back, then stay with this. Do not click away too soon, because what feels confusing may actually be the clearest thing in your life right now. There are moments when a person appears and the word coincidence stops making sense. You can study the timing. You can replay every conversation. You can try to explain it with logic. But deep down, you already know logic was never fully leading this story. This person did not just cross your path. They came with weight, with purpose, with a strange sense of recognition that felt immediate and hard to describe. And even now, after silence, after distance, after all the reasons you gave yourself to let it go, there is still a pull that has not disappeared. That matters. People do not leave this kind of mark by chance. So stay here, because in the next few minutes, you may understand why your heart still refuses to call this finished, and why walking away too soon could mean missing the truth that has been trying to reach you all along. There are certain meetings in life that do not feel new at all. They feel remembered. That is what makes them so unsettling and so powerful at the same time. When this person entered your world, something shifted quietly but permanently inside you. It was not always loud, it was not always dramatic, but it was real. Since then, even when you tried to focus on your daily life, even when you pushed yourself to act normal and move forward, a part of you kept returning to them in the background. Not in a desperate way, in a deeper way. In a way that feels tied to something old, familiar, and strangely grounded in your own inner history. That is why this connection has been so hard to dismiss. It did not behave like a simple crush or a passing emotional wave. It stayed. It moved through your thoughts when life became quiet. It returned in the early morning, late at night, in moments when no one else could see what was happening inside you. And that is where the real conflict began. One part of you wanted to trust what you felt. Another part wanted proof, certainty, and visible action. You were caught between your heart and the silence around you, caught between what felt true inside and what looked uncertain outside. And silence can be cruel like that. Silence feeds doubt. Distance makes the mind question what the soul already sensed. But here is the truth. Imagined things usually fade when time tests them. Illusions break apart. Fantasy weakens. Yet this did not. It remained steady through time, through space, through unanswered questions. That is why you must pay attention. What lasts this long often carries meaning much deeper than the mind first allows. What you feel is not loud in the way obsession is loud. It does not always demand. It does not always shout. In fact, what makes it so powerful is that it often lives underneath everything else, quiet but constant, like a hidden current moving under the surface of your life. It rises in still moments. It comes in waves that seem to appear from nowhere. A memory, a song, a shift in energy, a sudden knowing you cannot explain. That is because the connections that truly change us are never shallow. They do not just touch the surface of our emotions, they rearrange something on the inside. They open doors that cannot fully close again. They make it impossible to go back to the person you were before the meeting happened. And that may be one reason letting go has felt so difficult. It is not only that you are holding on to another person, you are also holding on to a truth about yourself that this connection revealed. You learned how deeply you can feel. You learned what full emotional presence looks like inside your own heart. You learned that you are no longer able to settle for half love, weak connection, empty attention, or people who stay near you without truly meeting you. That awakening matters. Some people come into your life not to stay right away, but to wake you up, to show you what has been missing, to break your old standards, to pull you out of emotional sleep. And once that happens, you cannot pretend not to know anymore. So if this has been hard to release, maybe it is because the bond was never only about romance. Maybe it was also about your own becoming, your own growth, your own return to something more honest and alive inside yourself. Even through the silence, this person may feel more than they ever showed. That is something many people misunderstand. They think silence means no feeling. They think distance means no care. They think if someone pulls back, then the connection must have been false. But sometimes silence means the feeling is too large for the other person to manage in the way you hoped. Sometimes distance comes from fear, not from emptiness. Some people carry deep emotion behind a calm face. Some people shut down when they feel too much. Some people step back not because the bond means nothing, but because it means too much and asks for a level of openness they do not yet know how to hold. Their distance may not be a lack of heart. It may be fear of losing control, fear of being seen too deeply, fear of vulnerability, fear of the mirror that this connection places in front of them, because that is what true bonds often do. They mirror the hidden parts of us, the unresolved wounds, the old defenses, the buried needs, the patterns we learned to survive. If one soul wakes up faster than the other, the difference in timing can create painful space between them. One feels ready to open, the other feels exposed and pulls back. And this is where many deep connections seem to break, not because there was no truth in them, but because truth arrived before both people were strong enough to live it. So if you have felt confused by their retreat, do not rush to label it as indifference. What looks like avoidance may actually be someone being guided by what they have not yet faced inside themselves. And that inner battle can be louder than anything they say out loud. The reason this has stayed with you is because unfinished meaning has a way of living on. If this connection were truly over in every deep sense, it likely would have ended cleanly. You would have felt the door close. The energy would have settled. The grip on your spirit would have loosened. Instead, it keeps showing up. In signs, in dreams, in strange little moments that seem too exact to ignore. Maybe you keep seeing the same numbers. Maybe songs appear at the right second. Maybe their memory arrives with unusual force when your mind was nowhere near them. Maybe your body feels it before your thoughts do. These things are not always meant to trap you. Sometimes they are there to steady you when doubt gets too loud. They remind you that not everything important is visible right away. There is a difference between forcing a door and knowing it will open when the moment is ready. That difference is everything. Hope rooted in fear becomes obsession, but hope rooted in inner knowing becomes patience. And patience is not weakness when it stands beside self-respect. That is where your growth has been leading you, not into anxious waiting, but into a deeper understanding of what this bond is teaching you. Right now, something may be moving underneath the surface that you cannot fully see yet. Resistance softens slowly. Hearts change slowly. People who run from deep feeling often do not turn around all at once. They go through internal pressure, they reach limits. They realize that losing something real feels worse than facing what scared them. That shift takes time, but once it begins, it changes everything. So if you have felt movement lately, even subtle movement, trust that what is hidden is not always inactive. A great deal can be happening in silence. And while all of this has been unfolding, you have not stayed the same either. In fact, one of the strongest truths in this story is that you are no longer the person you were before this connection touched your life. Your emotional awareness has deepened. Your standards have risen. Your spirit has become less willing to accept shallow affection or half-present love. Before, you may have confused intensity with intimacy. You may have thought longing proved meaning. You may have settled for chemistry without true alignment. But now you feel the difference. Now you know that real connection does not only stir the heart, it also asks for honesty, steadiness, and presence. That is why this journey has been painful and sacred at the same time. It has stripped away what was false. It has shown you where you gave too much, where you ignored your own worth, where fear disguised itself as loyalty. It has taught you the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment says you need this person in order to feel whole. Alignment says you can stand on your own and still recognize what is deeply meant for you. That shift changes the entire energy of the bond. When you stop chasing clarity and begin living from it, the pressure starts to leave. Your energy becomes grounded. You stop begging life for proof every second. You start returning to yourself. And that is when the dynamic can truly change. Because deep connections are not meant to keep you trapped in suffering. They are meant to guide you back to your own center, to make you stronger, clearer, more awake. So if you have felt yourself becoming more honest, more calm, more protective of your peace, that is not a side effect. That is part of the purpose. And it is exactly the kind of inner change that makes real reunion possible. If reunion is where this path is leading. Something else happens when your energy changes. The other person feels it, even if nothing has been said. They sense when you stop waiting in the old anxious way. They sense when you begin pulling your energy back toward your own life. They sense when your presence becomes clean instead of reaching. And that can shake them more deeply than pursuit ever did. Because when you were chasing, they could hide behind your effort. They could stay passive while you carried the emotional weight. But when you stop twisting yourself to keep the bond alive, the connection is forced into honesty. It must either rise or reveal where it cannot. And that truth can be deeply confronting for someone who has been avoiding their own heart. Suddenly, the possibility of losing you feels real. Suddenly, your absence carries meaning. Suddenly, the comfort of distance does not feel as safe as it once did. This is often the point where old defense patterns begin to crack. Emotional walls, control, avoidance, pride. These things once protected them. Now they only isolate them from the very love they claim to want. And that is a hard truth to face. Moving toward real connection means risking vulnerability. Staying back means letting something rare slip away. That choice becomes impossible to ignore forever. So if the direction feels like it is changing, if you sense closeness even without words, if the energy feels warmer, quieter, more serious, do not dismiss it too quickly. Sometimes the deepest turning points do not begin with noise. They begin with inner surrender. They begin when a person realizes that the old way of staying guarded costs more than opening ever did. Stay with this part, because this is where fear begins to lose power and where truth starts speaking louder than defense. There comes a point when longing changes shape. It stops feeling like a wound and starts becoming understanding. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin sensing that it may be happening for you. That shift is enormous. It is where pain starts turning into wisdom. It is where suffering slowly loses its grip. You still care, but you care differently. You still feel the bond, but it no longer throws you into panic. Your thoughts of them begin arriving with more stillness, more acceptance, more trust. That does not mean the connection matters less. It means you are finally relating to it from strength rather than fear. And when one person in a bond reaches that level, the entire dynamic must respond. Energy always seeks balance. When you stop feeding the bond with anxiety, it can no longer grow through confusion. It has to move toward truth. That truth may look like reconnection. It may look like a clear conversation. It may look like closure spoken honestly at last. Or it may look like a reunion built on a new foundation. But whatever form it takes, it will no longer have the same power to destroy you because you have already come back to yourself. That is the real transformation. You are not standing in the same place anymore. You want depth over fantasy, presence over mixed signals, real action over emotional smoke. And this new standard inside you sends out a powerful signal. It says very clearly, confusion is no longer enough. If this bond is real, it must live in truth. It must come closer to honesty. It must stop hiding behind timing forever. That is why your calm matters so much now. Calm is not giving up. Calm is alignment. Calm is what allows you to see clearly what the next step truly is. Fear is still part of this process, of course. It may still rise in both of you. But fear is not always a warning. Sometimes it is only a memory. Sometimes it is the old self trying to protect against pain that already taught its lesson. The important thing is that fear must not lead. Let it be there without obeying it. Let the uncertainty pass through you without building your whole reality around it. You are not the same person you were when this connection first began to shake your world. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need to explain your heart to people who cannot understand it. Your growth speaks for itself. Your peace speaks for itself. And the body often knows before the mind does. Pay attention to that. Less tightness, more openness, less chaos, more steadiness. These are signs that you are moving into truth. Real love does not ask you to become smaller. It does not ask you to beg for crumbs. It does not ask you to stay trapped in confusion forever and call that fate. Real love asks for honesty, courage, and the willingness to be seen. That is why what comes next will matter so much. If communication opens, let it open naturally. Do not rush it. Do not force it. Real reconnection cannot be dragged into existence. It has to arrive from readiness, from wholeness, from both people being able to meet what they once could only feel. And if that moment comes, it will ask for discernment, not fantasy, not blindness. discernment. You will need to see clearly whether words match action, whether presence is real, whether accountability has finally entered the space. That is why your strength is so important now. Because the next part of this story is not about losing yourself in emotion. It is about allowing truth to reveal itself while you stay deeply rooted in who you have become. A quiet strength begins to form when you no longer need outside reassurance every day in order to trust what your heart has already learned. You stop scanning the world for constant signs because something in you has settled. You begin to understand that this connection has always been showing you who you are becoming. It has been a mirror, not only of love, but of self-worth, timing, honesty, and emotional maturity. You no longer feel the need to defend your feelings to anyone. You no longer need other people to validate what touched your soul, and that steadiness changes everything. When your presence becomes clear, undistorted by fear, the connection must respond honestly. Either it rises to meet you, or it shows where it still cannot. Both outcomes carry truth. Both outcomes free you from illusion. That is what makes this moment powerful. You are no longer trapped in the old version of the bond. Something has matured. Something has deepened. And the space you once filled with effort is no longer available for the other person to lean on without responsibility. They feel that. They feel the weight of what could truly be lost. They feel the pull toward choice. Because at some point, deep feeling demands a real response. It cannot remain hidden forever. This is why the energy may seem more alive lately. Not rushed, not forced, just more real, more direct, more ready. If they come forward, it will need to be with intention, with truth, with emotional accountability. And if they do not, you will still stand. That is the beauty of your growth. You are no longer depending on one outcome to decide your peace. You have already returned to your own soul, and that is why whatever happens next will meet a version of you that is far stronger than before. So do not walk away too soon just because the middle of the story has been hard to understand. Some things look unclear only because they are still unfolding. Some bonds take time to come into their true form. Some people need longer to wake up to what they feel. Some truths ask both hearts to grow before they can be lived. That does not mean you should stay stuck. It means you should stay open without abandoning yourself. Keep your standards, keep your peace, keep your life moving, but do not close the door in your spirit out of wounded impatience if something inside you still knows there is more here. The connection is either rising into truth or dissolving into understanding, but either way, it is not asking you to shrink anymore. It is asking you to trust what has been built inside you through all of this. Your maturity, your self-respect, your emotional clarity, your ability to feel deeply without collapsing. These are the real gifts of this path. And if a conversation is forming, if courage is building on both sides, if life is preparing a moment of honest opening, then you will meet it differently now, with discernment, with strength, with calm, not with the old panic, not with desperation, just truth. That is why this chapter matters so much, because the real transformation was never only about another person returning. It was about you becoming someone who can recognize real love without betraying yourself to keep it. So breathe, stay grounded. Let life reveal what is real. Something is still moving here. Something is still gathering courage. And the next part of this journey may arrive sooner than you think, not as a vague sign you must chase, but as a clear moment that asks you to stand in your worth and finally see what this connection was always trying to become.